I'm Luna Martinez, a 32-year-old graphic designer living in a charming seaside town in Maine, where the Atlantic's whisper is my daily soundtrack. Life here was supposed to be peaceful, lighthouse views, lobster rolls, and quiet evenings sketching by my studio window. I'd escaped from Boston 3 years ago, desperate to leave behind the city's chaos and the crushing weight of my childhood, where my parents' relentless criticism made me feel like I'd never be good enough. Art became my sanctuary, my way of proving I mattered. When I met Blake Mitchell, my college sweetheart, I thought I'd finally found someone who truly saw me. His gentle laugh and steady kindness felt like coming home. When we married, I believed we were building something unshakable. The morning everything changed started like any other. Standing in our cozy bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines, my heart hammered with equal parts joy and terror. Blake found me there, tears streaming down my face. "Luna, what's wrong?" he asked, then saw the test in my trembling hands. "Blake, we're going to be parents," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. He pulled me into an embrace so tight I could feel his heart racing against mine. "Are you serious?" "We're really doing this," he said, his eyes bright with wonder. That evening, we sat on our porch swing, dreaming about our baby. Would they have his warm brown eyes or my stubborn streak? It was our precious secret, a bubble of happiness we wanted to protect. Blake, ever the cautious one, suggested waiting until after the first trimester to share the news. I agreed, though keeping it inside felt like trying to hold back the tide. Blake's family, however, was a different story entirely. His mother, Margaret Mitchell, is a retired principal who runs her household like a military operation, every detail scrutinized and judged. Growing up, she'd controlled Blake's every choice, his clothes, his activities, even his friends, leaving him hesitant to ever push back. Margaret's warm smile masks a razor-sharp tongue, and from our first meeting, I felt like I was constantly being evaluated. Blake's sister, Vanessa, a Pilates instructor with a permanent chip on her shoulder, treats me like I've stolen something precious from her. I suspect it's because Blake and I are so close, and she's always felt like the outsider in their tight family unit. His brother Trevor, a boat mechanic, keeps his distance, probably exhausted from years of Margaret's drama. Their father, Charles, who owns a local fishing charter, just stays quiet, his weathered eyes fixed on the horizon like he's avoiding the storm brewing at home. Family gatherings feel like navigating a minefield. Every word I speak is weighed and measured, every gesture analyzed for flaws. But this time would be different. This time, we had news that would surely bring joy, right? As we prepared for the upcoming family barbecue at their waterfront home, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Blake squeezed my hand as we packed the car. "They're going to be thrilled," he said, but something in his voice suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as me. Little did I know, this announcement would unleash a nightmare I never could have imagined. Living under Margaret's constant scrutiny felt like trying to paint a masterpiece while someone shook the easel. Every move I made was dissected, every choice questioned. One evening, as I prepped clam chowder in our kitchen, she called to check in about our plans for the weekend barbecue. "Luna, you're bringing that spinach salad again, right? Make sure the greens are fresh. Last time they seemed a bit limp," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness that barely masked the criticism. I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. "Of course, Margaret," I replied, fighting to keep my tone even. Blake overheard and gave me a sympathetic look, but as usual, said nothing. I wished, just once, he'd tell his mother to back off, but that wasn't his style. He'd spent 30 years tiptoeing around her, and old habits die hard. Vanessa wasn't any better. At a family lunch the previous week, she'd watched me set the table and commented, "Luna, those paper napkins are cute. We typically use cloth for family occasions." Her smile was all teeth, like a shark mocking territory. I wanted to scream that I wasn't competing for the family crown, but I just nodded, feeling smaller with each passive-aggressive jab. Trevor, as always, stayed neutral, focusing intently on his coffee like it held the secrets of the universe. Charles gave me a quick nod, his way of acknowledging my existence without getting involved in the family politics. I felt like a permanent outsider in a family I was supposed to belong to. That night, I called my best friend, Jasmine Cooper, pacing our living room with the phone pressed to my ear. The ocean crashed outside, matching the storm in my chest. "I can't keep doing this, Jazz," I said, my voice cracking. "Margaret acts like I'm failing some invisible test, and Vanessa's just waiting for me to mess up. I'm supposed to be glowing, right? That's what pregnant women do. Instead, I feel trapped. Jasmine's voice was steady, like an anchor in rough seas. Luna, you're not trapped. You're carrying a miracle, and they're too busy playing power games to see it. You need to set boundaries, especially now. Your baby deserves better than this toxic environment. Her words hit deep. I'd spent my childhood shrinking under my parents' criticism, and I refused to let my child grow up in a family where love came with conditions. As the barbecue approached, my nerves were frayed. I spent hours perfecting a strawberry spinach salad with candied pecans, hoping to finally win Margaret over, even though I knew it was probably futile. Blake found me fussing in the kitchen and wrapped his arms around me. You're incredible, you know that? He said, kissing my temple. His warmth melted some of my tension, but I couldn't shake the dread building in my stomach. What if they ruin this for us? I asked, barely above a whisper. He squeezed my hands. They won't. This is our moment, Luna. I wanted to believe him, but his reluctance to stand up to his family made me wonder if he'd truly have my back when it counted. As we loaded the car the next morning, that question haunted me. The barbecue at Margaret's waterfront home should have felt like a postcard, the scent of grilled burgers mixing with salt air, the Connecticut coastline stretching endlessly beyond their deck. Instead, all I could focus on was the knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with morning sickness. I set my salad on the outdoor table, watching Margaret inspect it like a health inspector examining a questionable restaurant. Looks colorful, she said, her lips pursing slightly. You did wash the strawberries properly, didn't you? I forced a smile, my nails digging into my palms. Twice, I said, keeping my voice light despite the irritation bubbling inside me. Vanessa hovered nearby, tossing her perfectly styled hair. Luna, that sundress is quite bold. Feeling confident today. Her tone was sugar-sweet, but her eyes were calculating. I ignored her, focusing on arranging napkins, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. Blake shot me an encouraging look from across the deck where he was helping Charles with the grill. As we sat down to eat, Margaret didn't let up. This burger's a bit dry, Blake. Did you time it right? She asked, cutting into her food like it had personally offended her. Blake shifted beside me, but remained silent. I swallowed my frustration, managing a polite smile. The table was uncomfortably quiet except for the clink of silverware and Charles's occasional throat clearing. Trevor stared at his plate like it held fascinating secrets, and I felt like I was dining with strangers instead of family. My baby kicked, a tiny flutter that reminded me why I was here. I clung to that spark of hope. Blake cleared his throat, his hand finding mine under the table. We have something exciting to share, he said, his voice steady but nervous. My pulse raced as he looked at me with those warm brown eyes I'd fallen in love with. Luna and I are having a baby. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Charles actually smiled, a rare crack in his weathered facade. Trevor looked up from his plate and muttered, "Hey, congrats, man." But Margaret's fork froze halfway to her mouth, her expression shifting from surprise to something cold and calculating. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into something between a smirk and a scowl. Then Margaret spoke, her voice cutting through the ocean breeze like ice. "A baby? Luna, are you certain? This seems awfully convenient timing with Blake's promotion coming up at the firm." My breath caught like I'd been slapped. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger. Margaret leaned forward, her steely gaze locked on mine. "The timing is just suspicious. How do we know you're really pregnant and not just trying to secure your future?" Vanessa jumped in, her voice dripping with venom. "Yeah, I distinctly remember you saying you weren't ready for children last Christmas. Funny how things change when there's money involved." I felt like the deck was tilting beneath me. I turned to Blake, waiting for him to shut this down, to tell them they were completely out of line. But he just looked confused and uncomfortable. "Maybe we should," he started weakly. That's when everything went horribly wrong. "Maybe we should what, Blake?" I asked, my voice rising with disbelief. But instead of defending me, he rubbed the back of his neck, that nervous gesture I knew too well. Margaret stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the deck. "If you're truly pregnant, Luna, then prove it. A simple blood test would clear this up immediately." My jaw dropped. "Prove it." This was supposed to be a celebration, the moment we shared our joy with family. Instead, I was being interrogated like a criminal. I looked desperately at Blake, my heart pleading for him to stand by me, to tell his mother she was completely out of line. But he hesitated, avoiding my eyes. Maybe it's not such a bad idea, Luna, he said quietly. Just to put everyone's minds at ease. His words hit me like a physical blow, tearing through every piece of trust we'd built together. The man I'd loved since college, the one who'd held me through my darkest moments, was actually questioning whether I was lying about carrying our child. I stood so abruptly my chair wobbled behind me. This is insane. I'm not subjecting myself to this humiliation. My voice cracked, anger and heartbreak colliding in my chest. I turned to leave, tears burning my eyes, but Margaret stepped directly into my path, her face hard as granite. If you walk away now, we'll know you're lying, she said, her voice like a blade cutting through the tension. Get out of my way, I snapped, my hands trembling with rage and hurt. Then it happened so fast it felt like slow motion. Margaret's hand shot out, shoving me hard in the chest. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on the edge of a deck planter. I reached desperately for something, anything, to steady myself, but my hands grasped only air. Trevor lunged toward me, his face panicked, shouting no. But he was too late. I fell backward off the deck, the world spinning as I tumbled 10 feet down onto the rocky landscaping below. Pain exploded through my body as I hit the ground, my head striking a decorative stone. The last thing I heard before darkness claimed me was Blake screaming my name. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, the sterile smell and rhythmic beeping of monitors pulling me back to consciousness. My first thought was my baby. Was she okay? Panic gripped me as I clutched my stomach, terror choking off my breath. A doctor appeared beside my bed, her expression calm but serious. Mrs. Mitchell, you're stable, and remarkably, your baby is fine. You have a concussion and some bruising, but the pregnancy wasn't affected. Relief flooded through me, but it was immediately followed by the devastating memory of what had happened. Margaret's shove. Vanessa's smirk. Blake's silence when I needed him most. Blake sat in a chair beside my bed, his face pale and haunted. Luna, I'm so sorry, he whispered. I never thought she would. I didn't know it would go this far. I turned away, my heart shattering. His apologies felt empty, like trying to fill the ocean with a teacup. How could he sit there saying he was sorry after allowing his mother to question my truth? After standing by while she literally pushed me off a deck? The trust was broken, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. Before I could respond to Blake's hollow apologies, Jasmine burst through the hospital door, her scrubs wrinkled from her shift at Portland General. Luna. Oh my God, are you okay? She said, her trained nurse's eyes quickly assessing my condition before turning to Blake with blazing fury. And you? How the hell did you let this happen? She demanded. Blake stammered, I didn't. It wasn't. I never thought. Save it, Jasmine cut him off, her voice like a whip. She turned back to me, her expression softening. I'm here, Luna. Whatever you need. Blake mumbled something about needing air and slipped out, leaving me alone with the one person I could truly count on. I poured out everything, Margaret's accusations, the demand for proof, Blake's betrayal, and finally, the push that could have killed both me and my baby. Jasmine's face darkened with each word, her jaw clenching tighter and tighter. That evil which could have murdered you both, she whispered. As we talked, voices drifted in from the hallway. Margaret's sharp tone carried clearly through the door. We just need to convince Blake it was an accident. Luna's always been dramatic, she probably just tripped. Vanessa's voice chimed in, smug and calculating, exactly. And that pregnancy thing? She's obviously faking it to trap him. The timing's too convenient. My blood ran cold, but Jasmine's eyes lit up with determination. Without a word, she pulled out her phone and hit record, capturing every damning syllable as they continued plotting their cover-up. When their voices faded, Jasmine looked at me with fierce protectiveness. They're not getting away with this, Luna. That moment flipped a switch inside me. I'd spent too long trying to please Margaret, to fit into Blake's family, to shrink myself to avoid conflict. No more. You're right, Jazz. I'm done, I said, my voice steady despite the tears. I'm leaving Blake. I have to protect my baby. Her eyes softened, but she nodded firmly. I've got your back. Let's make sure they face consequences. Over the next few hours, we built our case. Jasmine spoke with the ER staff who treated me, getting copies of my medical records that clearly showed both my pregnancy and injuries consistent with a fall from height. We need witness statements too, Jasmine said, her mind racing. The nurses saw your condition when you came in. I hesitated, thinking of Blake. His texts kept coming, apologies mixed with confusion, as if he still half believed his mother's version of events. Forward them to me, Jasmine said firmly. It's all evidence. Each message stung, a reminder that the man I'd loved didn't fully trust me even now. Then I made a call I never thought I would. Hello, is this Catherine Stone's office? I need to discuss a domestic violence case, I said, my voice shaking but determined. Jasmine returned with arms full of paperwork. Got everything. Medical records, witness statements, and that recording of Margaret and Vanessa scheming. When Blake returned, his face was a mixture of guilt and confusion. Luna, Mom wants to apologize. Can we please talk about this? I looked at him, the man I'd loved since we were 20, the one who'd promised to protect me. But that love wasn't enough anymore. No, Blake, I said quietly. I'm done. Months passed in a blur of legal preparation and personal healing. I was 8 months pregnant, living in Jasmine's cozy apartment overlooking Portland's Old Port. My belly was a constant reminder of the future I was fighting for, and the ocean outside her window provided a steady, calming rhythm that matched my newfound resolve. Jasmine handed me a cup of herbal tea one morning, her eyes searching mine. Ready for court today? She asked gently. I took a sip, my hand trembling slightly. As ready as I'll ever be, I said, managing a small smile. The thought of facing Margaret and Blake in that courtroom made my stomach churn, but I wasn't backing down. Not for my daughter. The Portland courthouse was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Across the room, Margaret sat with her usual composure, like she was untouchable. Vanessa fidgeted beside her, her earlier confidence nowhere to be found. Blake was there too, his eyes avoiding mine, looking like a man drowning in guilt and confusion. My attorney, Catherine Stone, was a force of nature, sharp, calm, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting her clients. She laid out our case with surgical precision, my medical records proving both pregnancy and injuries, statements from hospital staff who'd seen me wheeled and bruised and bleeding, and Blake's text messages showing his doubt about my honesty. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Your Honor, we'd like to present audio evidence of the defendants conspiring to cover up their actions, Catherine announced, her voice cutting through the hushed courtroom. As Margaret and Vanessa's voices filled the room, scheming to call my fallen accident, questioning my pregnancy, plotting to manipulate Blake, you could have heard a pin drop. Margaret's face drained of all color, her iron composure finally cracking. Vanessa looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. Blake's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock and horror. For the first time, he was hearing what his family really thought of me, of us, of our unborn child. Judge Patricia Hoffman's expression hardened as she listened to every damning word. Mrs. Mitchell, she said to Margaret, her voice like steel, you pushed your pregnant daughter-in-law off a 10-foot deck, endangering both her life and that of her unborn child. How do you plead? Margaret stammered, it was an accident, Your Honor. I never meant. Save it for your attorney, Judge Hoffman cut her off. You're facing charges of assault and reckless endangerment of an unborn child. During a recess, Blake approached me, his face haggard and desperate. Luna, I had no idea they were. I'm so sorry. Can we please talk? Can we fix this? His voice cracked, and for a moment I saw the college boy I'd fallen for, the one who'd held my hand through finals week and late-night doubts about my future. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who'd chosen his toxic family over his wife and child. No, Blake, I said firmly. You doubted me when I needed you most. You let them attack me and our baby. There's no coming back from that. His shoulders slumped in defeat, and he walked away. The distance between us was finally, irreversibly complete. When Judge Hoffman's gavel fell, it sounded like freedom. In the matter of Martinez versus Mitchell, this court rules in favor of the plaintiff. Ms. Martinez is granted a divorce, full custody of her unborn child, and a settlement of $850,000 for emotional damages, medical expenses, and future counseling needs. Relief washed over me like a warm tide. Margaret was sentenced to 18 months in prison for assault, and I walked out of that courthouse with my head high, ready to build a life where my daughter and I could flourish without fear or judgment. 3 years later, I'm hanging streamers for my daughter Isabella's 3rd birthday party. She's my little miracle, born healthy despite everything we'd been through, now giggling as she chases soap bubbles around our backyard garden in Cape Elizabeth. The lighthouse outside our window blinks steadily, a beacon of the peace we've found. Jasmine arrives with her arms full of presents, her grin as bright as the Maine sunshine. "Where's my favorite birthday girl?" she calls out, and Isabella squeals with delight. "Auntie Jazz." I watch them together, my heart overflowing. My life looks nothing like I'd once imagined, but it's so much better than I ever dared hope. I run a successful graphic design business now, specializing in helping domestic violence survivors tell their stories through art and advocacy campaigns. It's my way of turning pain into purpose, of giving others the voice I had to fight so hard to find. The work is meaningful, the clients become friends, and Isabella often sits beside me at my drawing table, scribbling her own masterpieces. The party fills our home with laughter, friends from the community center, neighbors who've become chosen family, other single moms who understand the journey. No Margaret, no Vanessa, no shadows from the toxic past. Margaret served her time and moved to Florida afterward, and I don't think about her anymore. She has no place in our bright, peaceful world. Blake sends cards sometimes, birthday wishes for Isabella, awkward attempts at reconciliation, but I don't open them. The lawyers handle any necessary communication about child support, which he pays faithfully but from a distance. Isabella and I are complete as we are, surrounded by people who lift us up instead of tearing us down. As I tuck Isabella into her toddler bed that night, her tiny hand warm in mine, I whisper, "Happy birthday, my brave girl. The world is yours for the taking." I kiss her forehead, breathing in that sweet baby scent that's already starting to fade as she grows. The peace I feel is something I never knew before, deep, unshakable, earned through fire and emerged stronger. This life we've built, safe, joyful, authentically ours, was worth every battle, every tear, every moment of doubt. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I was too hard on Blake, if I should have given him a chance to make amends. Part of me will always ache for the love we once shared. But then I look at Isabella, sleeping peacefully in a home filled with respect and genuine care, and I know I made the right choice. I protected us both, and in doing so, I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. The lighthouse beam sweeps across our window, steady and sure, just like the future stretching ahead of us, bright, limitless, and free.